everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. Glad to have you here. I have a guest with me who has a stack of drums behind him on camera, which makes me happy. And apparently we're not going to have a drum solo, so I'm sorry. But hey, Devon is here. We're going to be talking about all things podcasting. He's got some amazing resources for all the podcasters listening today to help you with your show. Devon's a great leader in podcasting, and I'm excited to have him here. Devon, welcome to the How Podcast series. It's great to have you here.
It's a pleasure, David. Thanks for having me on.
Excellent. And you are in Canada.
Yes, sir.
True. So tell us where you are.
I am one of maybe 100 people that are actually born and raised here in Calgary, Alberta. Everybody else that I know has come here from another place looking for work or that sort of thing. And so that's my claim to fame, is that I'm one of the few people that are still natively born here.
I was here first, gosh dang it. Right? Oh, yeah. So that's good. Tell us a little bit about your background in podcasting. How did all this start for you? It's kind of a great place for us to begin our conversation.
So a long time ago, this is fresh out of high school, me and my brother were... I was recently moved out. He still lived with my parents, and we were kind of struggling with us being so disconnected and not being able to spend as much time as we used to because we lived together, right? So, I had a thing for music, if you didn't already know, and he was looking for a way to connect with me and had saw this movie called, I don't know if you're familiar with it, it's called Hustle and Flow. And in it, it's this harrowing story of a young man who decides to chase after the dream of being an independent hip-hop artist. And I don't want to give it away, but the whole premise was built upon this idea that it was very simple to create instrumentals and then rap or sing over those instrumentals. And so my brother suggested, hey, we should try this. So he spent his every last cent that he had buying a MIDI keyboard from Future Shop, back when Future Shop was still a thing. And we set it up in the we'll call it the studio. It was just a bedroom. And we started trying to figure out how to do this whole thing. Fast forward, dozens of books and courses later, we kind of figured out how to record music well. But that's not the end of it. We really, truly started to understand the definition of a starving artist because, 5 or 6 years into it, we're still just making music and not really getting anywhere, not getting any fans, not growing, not really benefiting monetarily from it in any way either. So we looked into a bunch of different marketing tactics and different strategies for developing our artistry. And this was just before the era of like Napster and LimeWire and all that other stuff where you'd give your computer cancer just so you could listen to the latest Lil Jon and Usher song. Yeah. So we were putting together an album. We started selling it out of our trunk. Basically, we'd park in front of a local club where, the nightlife was vibing and everybody was, a little tipsy, and we plugged in our boombox and started performing some of our songs, and we were able to sell, a few CDs every night, and that kind of helped fund and fuel the rest of our progress. But things started shifting around that time, where music started going online, and CDs were no longer popular, and so it became more and more hard to sell them, and so we had to pivot. And in doing that, we decided that we were going to do this thing where we look at the latest big hit that kind of hit the mainstream, and we'd find an instrumental or make an instrumental for that song and then remake it and put our own version to it. We did a few of these, got a bunch of views and a bunch of new followers and fans and that sort of thing. But then, of course, the big mobsters, the Universal Music Group and Sony Entertainment, they didn't like that either. So
dun dun dun. Yeah.
We got caught. We had to take a lot of that stuff down, and so again, we were at a standstill, like this moment in time where everybody was shifting into online, and we were trying to figure out, like, what's the formula? Like, how do we get fans and make content and develop all of this stuff? And so that was a a few years of just tinkering and dabbling in a bunch of different things. And somewhere along the lines, I landed on this idea that I was going to take some of my transferable skills that I learned in all of this marketing and content creation and that sort of thing, and I was going to bring it to businesses and see if there was a way that we could get businesses to move into the space of creating content online to build their own audience and fan base and customers as a result of that. And so we needed a way to do that in a consistent way that allowed us to speak to the problems and solutions that were available for these businesses while also being entertaining. And punchline, I'm sure you could see this one coming a mile away, it was podcasts. Podcast was the way to create content in a sustainable way that was useful to the people that were watching, and then businesses could now use that audience that they were generating to, put real marketing calls to actions, that type of thing in front of that group of people and inspire them to become customers, as I put it. So I worked in that space for quite a while. I don't know even if it's been 6 or 7 years now that I've been doing podcasting as a part of my marketing agency, and I've launched maybe a dozen or more podcasts, one of which is a bittersweet win. We did so well with this podcast that it ended up getting picked up by a major television network, and in spite of my fighting and clawing to stay a part of the team, they already had a lot of guys that were just like me on their team, so there was no room for me there. But it makes for a killer testimonial, and lent to me what I'll say earning my book, which is the latest endeavor that I'm on right now. Is kind of me and my partner Mitch from the Perspective Podcast. We have been working on trying to create a way to help people decide whether or not podcasting is a good fit for them. And the roadblock that we find a lot of people have faced is that there's a lot of questions. There's a lot of moving parts in it all. So it's overwhelming, it's daunting, it's scary, and I wanted to help people eliminate that fear and take away some of that reluctance and the unknowing part, and fill in some of the gaps, so that if it is something that's a good fit, you're prepared, you know what you're doing, and you can kind of move forward confidently and make more informed decisions. And I think that's actually how me and David met. Is that right?
It's right. I think so. Tell us more about the book then. Like, where is it available? What's it all about? Give us some insight into the book as well.
So the book was, in all honesty, it was an accident. It started out as, because I understand the leverage that you have when you create content that serves a specific niche, and then you use that content to attract an audience, and you turn that audience into clients if they're ready and when they're ready. So what my goal was, I went on Google, and I don't know if you guys can imagine this, but when you go on Google and you type in a question that you have, so I started with how to podcast. That was the first question that I typed in. And if you scroll down a little bit, there's a section there that says people also ask, and then it gives you 4 other questions. Mm-hmm. You can hit the little arrow there and it'll drop down. It'll give you an answer to that question, kind of in point form. And if you want more, you can go to that website or that article or whatever it is. And so what I did was I opened and closed it a couple of times. And when you do that, you start adding more questions to the list. And I started realizing there's a lot of questions as it relates to podcasting. I'm like, okay, this is awesome. Maybe I can write a couple of blog articles about this type of stuff and share it in the groups and, kind of help build the audience that way. And so I did this probably a couple hundred times, and I copied and pasted that whole thing into a Google Doc, and then I just started chipping away at it. And I got so far into it that I realized, like, maybe this wasn't meant to be just blog posts, because it still felt like if somebody found that blog post, they're not getting any further. They still have to kind of duct tape all the other parts together. So right. I figured, why not just keep going and see what happens, see how far I can take this. And if I can get the word count to a place where it looks like a book, let's see if I can publish it and put it on Amazon and take the next steps with it. And so that's what I did. It was a total accident, and we ended up with a book that, after eliminating all the redundant questions, it's 88 questions that people ask Google about podcasting, and the answers, and some subtitle there.
It's amazing. Now, this is available where? I know through your website. Is that right?
Yeah, theperspectivepodcast.ca/88 questions is where we have it living right now. And you just put your name and email in there and we send it over to you. We don't do the whole spamming and email campaign thing. I figure if you have questions and you're ready to work with somebody or get the coaching or the guidance that you need, then you know where to find us. The names and emails are in the book. So we're very accessible, very easy to get in touch with. But yeah, it was I don't know, a journey of love to try to create this thing. And when I mentioned that I feel like I earned it, it's one of those things where if you sit down and you like start trying to write something to put into a book, if you don't have the knowledge or experience or the expertise to be able to put the right stuff in there, and this is what I was worried about, I was not going to have the right number of words or the number of pages it's going to take to be a book. So I found that as I was writing it was just very easy to answer the questions that most people are asking when it comes to the whole process of podcasting.
Excellent. When was this released into the world?
I'm going to say probably about 6 months ago, we did kind of a soft release. I haven't really done any major marketing on it. What I have been doing is looking around in Facebook groups for people who are asking questions that I know I can answer. Trying to provide a point form answer to that question and then invite people to go and get the book. Right now we're giving it away for free. I do know that when we publish it on Amazon, it's probably going to be around the $30 mark. So if you want to get ahead of that rush of people when we do actually start marketing this a little bit more seriously, then by all means visit that link and that's where you're going to find it.
And I would suggest anyone like myself, I'm speaking to myself here, who has a copy of this, which I'm thankful for, when the book does come out, to also then buy the book copy of it and leave a great review because you've been given so much great value in advance.
Yeah, that would help
for all the kind work. Yeah, that would be really good. So if you've ever received that in an email, what we've talked about has come to you, like myself, then put that in the plan. So when the book is launched, we're ready to come and support you and all the hard work you've done to create this for us. So first of all, thank you for doing that.
Yeah, it's like I said, it was just an endeavor of love. This is what I love doing. It's the thing that I don't know. I wake up every day and I'm excited to be a part of helping people, create things and have a voice. And I think often about why I feel that way or where that comes from. And when I was growing up, I always felt like I would become a teacher of some kind, and I had to develop skills and get good at things before I could teach them. And one of the things that I have figured out along the way since 2004, when I embarked down that journey of becoming a musician, was learning the skills to be a sound engineer, learning how to record things and then make them sound as you would have expected them to sound. Because anybody that's been in this business knows that is not an easy thing to achieve. The sound that comes out of the box is not the one that you hear regularly. There's a lot of work that goes into that. And so when I work with musicians, because that's part of my, regular ongoing client basis, I work with a lot of musicians who do vocal recordings and things like that in my studio. And they come to me looking for a specific outcome. They have this expectation of what they should sound like or what they want to sound like. Mm-hmm. And being able to sit with them in the room and kind of guide that process and see that moment where what they expect or what they want to come out finally connects to the performance that they're giving in front of that microphone. And I can tell you that there's nothing that parallels that feeling of seeing the spark ignite in somebody's eyes to realize oh man, I actually am really good at this and I could actually do something with this. And so that's part of what I wanted to do with the book. Was I want people to realize that this, sure, it's complicated. There are a lot of moving parts, but it's not so complicated that it's impossible for a regular person to start somewhere and then work their way through. And so one of the things that you'll learn very early in the book is that there's two really important questions that we get you to look at that will help guide that process. And this is what distinguishes the people who are successful in podcasting from the ones who do it once or twice and then disappear. And I'm going to touch on that after this, but The thing that distinguishes it is the question first, who are you helping with the podcast? And then the second question is, what are you helping them with? And I get that at first this is very difficult, especially if your goal was to create a variety show or a comedy show or something that's fun and interesting and not necessarily tied to a business per se. Because if you were to be a plumber and you were to start a podcast, well, the objective is obvious. Who are you helping? Well, people who need plumbing solutions. What are you helping them with? Well, plumbing solutions. We're helping them figure out how to, get the right bang for their buck when it comes to finding the right plumber or whatever it is. So it's clear and obvious. But in a variety show or maybe a news show or something like that, you got to get a little bit more clarity on what you're helping somebody with. So we could say, well, I'm helping anybody who wants to laugh, but that's difficult, right? If you're a comedian like Dave Chappelle, even me mentioning that name has half of the audience listening right now cringing, and the other half going like, Dave Chappelle's the GOAT. So there, it's subjective. So you're not just helping people laugh; you're helping a very specific group of people laugh, and that's where the real magic starts happening. When you know who that is, and then when you realize like what I'm helping people with is I'm keeping them distracted from whatever challenges that they're facing right now. That's why we go to these forms of content, is for some level of escapism or distraction or whatever. So being able to be clear on, okay, well, if I want to distract people, then I got to be really good at keeping their attention. And so how do you do that? What can you do? What skills can you develop that will keep people's attention? And it could be having really great stories. It could be understanding the science of telling a really good joke. Not just that you and your buddies get together and laugh a lot. That's not enough. That's not going to be enough to get people to pay attention, because we don't have the same context that you do with you and your friends and all that kind of thing.
Right.
So drilling down on those two things, that who you're helping and what you're helping them with, I think is the first, or is the best place to start your podcast journey. And then from there, you can start unpacking some of the other stuff that's important, like, what kind of gear should you be using, or how do you edit your stuff? What software should you use to edit? And then once it's edited, like, what do I do to get it out there on all those platforms? And once it's on the platforms, how do I make it grow? And once it's growing, how do I make it make money? And I'm often met with people that are in that part of their journey, like, oh, no, it was just a hobby. And I want to caution people against saying that it's just a hobby. Because you know what? Genuinely, if it is just a hobby, I don't have any problem with that. But what I do have a problem with is when somebody says, oh, it'd be great if I could make money, but I'm not really doing it for that. Well, there's a mixed message there. It's either that you're working really hard to develop something that will inevitably, because of your hard work, turn into a stream of revenue for you. Whether it's a small stream or a big stream, that's up to you. But the second you say, that's not what I'm doing it for, immediately puts that out as if that's not a goal, as if it's not something that's ever possible for you. And so there's a cautionary PSA right there for anybody that's doing this, is if you are doing it and you genuinely are doing it for a hobby, make the show, put it out for yourself to listen to, and then go and listen to it and be satisfied that is the outcome.
Good.
Do you see what I'm saying? There's a difference between those two paths for people to take.
Yeah. No, that's I'm glad you brought that up. That's good that we can kind of hone in on that. Tell us more about your podcast. Let's talk about that. Let's send people over there to listen to your show. Come on.
Yeah. So the Perspective podcast is me and my co-host Mitch Harley. And it's funny enough, we met because one of my salespeople reached out to him on LinkedIn and set up a cold call with him. And we got to talking, and the vibe was just right. We clicked right away. There was a lot of chemistry. We were, both on the same journey to, achieve a similar outcome. And so on that first call, we were like, what would it look like if we were to set up a podcast for ourselves? And what would we call it? And who would we be? Who are we helping and what are we helping them with? So we came up with a podcast to help entrepreneurial spirited people who want to start a business or run a business or grow the business that they have. And what we were going to offer them was, what we're helping them with was new perspectives on how to shape their business in a way that would allow them to foster positive culture, positive work culture, while still maximizing the productivity of the teams and giving the teams purpose and meaning, and allowing them to scale up and increase their revenue and develop different revenue streams, and just to see the world from different perspectives, and thus the name, the Perspective Podcast. Also can be found at the same website, the perspectivepodcast.ca. But yeah, that, funny enough, actually, me and Mitch, for the first 6 months that we were doing the podcast, we never even met in real life. We had only known each other through Zoom. And so it was after about 6 months of us doing the podcast that we were like, maybe we should go for a beer or something. And it turns out he only lived about 40 minutes away in a town around Calgary called Cochrane. And so we kind of met about at the 20-minute halfway mark at a little pub around here. And the rest is history. We've just been working diligently to continue publishing episodes of the podcast and working to help people and build community around it and that type of thing. So it's been an incredible journey so far. Good.
I love it. Okay. So my background's in music as well. And I've sat in the mixing room listening to people mix recordings for our singers. And I remember one thing that really caught my attention once. Our singer was in the booth. They did the song, they did it all, and we're all done. Mm-hmm. And, the engineer punched in and said, okay, let's do it one more time. This time I want you to smile. And I'm like, I looked at him and went, what do you mean by that? He said, you can hear a smile. Mm. So the singer did it again, this time smiling. It opened up something in the song and in the recording for the vocals that set the song in a different place than the original way without the smile.
Right.
And I thought, what a great thing to bring forward into podcasting, and is to, when you come to the mic and how you record, where's your frame of mind? Where's your reference? Are you enjoying this? Is there a smile in your voice when you're doing this? Yeah. Because you can hear that in your ears as you're listening to music or a podcast. You can actually hear the smile. And I'm like, that was like a moment for me to go, oh, I'm carrying that forward and sharing that. I want people to smile when they're podcasting because it radiates from who you are, and people can feel it through their ears. So would you kind of agree with that kind of thought?
That's, it's funny that you say that. That's about 85% of my work in the studio with somebody is helping them. And it's tough as a musician, right? When we create something, we have to create it from a place of emotion, or else it's inauthentic, right? And so when we create it from that emotion, a lot of the times we're in that emotion artistically as a writer. I'm speaking from my own experience. If I write something, and it's sad, well, I'm sad when I'm writing it. And then, okay, I'll later go to record that thing, and I have to revisit that sadness, and I have to re-experience it in order to get the performance that I'm meant to get. Tony Robbins puts it best. He said, with emotion comes emotion. And so having that smile, or if you're angry at something and making a furrowed brow, or if you genuinely are like a little bit sad, you can kind of you can tweak that motion to pull out what that emotion is. And when you do that, you tap into something otherworldly. And in coaching a lot of the people that I work with, that's part of the process. Is, okay, well, let me ask you this. What were you feeling when you wrote this? And what is the feeling that somebody else was meant to feel? And then how can we revisit that emotion together here in a safe place? Because sometimes it is a tough thing to do when it's a breakup, or a song about your mom, or whatever it is. It's tough to revisit that emotion. So you need to have somebody around you. But the curious thing about this is the common belief is that these people, these artists or these singers, that they're born with this thing, that it's an innate gift that you're given from God. And I'm going to tell you right now, if that is your belief, it is absolutely 100% wrong. It is something that somebody else gave you a long time ago, and you just decided to believe it because somewhere along the lines you confirmed it to be true. Probably because you tried to sing yourself, or you tried to do something yourself, and you heard yourself, and you're like, oh God, I don't have that thing. Now, I think we can all agree that one of the biggest, most famous musicians right now is Ed Sheeran. And if you hear his music right now, I may agree or disagree, but he's a very, very talented singer. And he creates music that is incredibly moving. Yeah. And if you don't feel something when you're listening to him, there might be something else deeper that you need some deep work that you need to do there. But what I would challenge you to do is go look up the interview that he did. I can't remember who he did the interview with, but he pulled up a video on his phone of him singing, let's just say 5 or 10 years ago, before he was a famous singer. And it is the most god-awful, terrible, sounds like a pack of cats that have been tied up in a garbage bag and stuffed in a wood chipper. It was not good. It's not a great voice. This was years and years and years ago. But he worked very hard. He didn't listen to anybody telling him, oh, you're a crappy singer, you should never do this, whatever. He didn't listen to any of that. He continued to work on developing the skill of singing. And he had coaches, he had people to kind of teach him what he was doing wrong. And, whether it's moving your larynx or your chest or speaking from your diaphragm or whatever it is, it's a skill that you just are unaware of, and you can learn how to do that thing. And so with this coaching and all that kind of thing, it was 2 years after that his first hit single had broken. And that's when he was doing the interviews. He said, look, guys, like, you think I was born with this talent? I wasn't. And he shows you how bad he was. And he's like, listen, anybody can do what I do. It's just a matter of whether or not you are brave enough to pursue that thing relentlessly in spite of all of the negative feedback that you are going to receive along the way. That is an inevitability. You're not going to become a rock star podcast guy right out of the gate. I'll tell you, some of my early content that I created was like me yelling at a camera from down here, and it was so cringeworthy. If you saw that then, you'd wonder who told me that I should keep doing this. And fast forward now, it's been probably at least 18 years since I first was on camera. And I don't know if you can tell, but I'm a lot more comfortable. I think I've developed a voice. I feel good. When I watch my stuff back now, I'm like, hey, who's that handsome young man? I feel good about it. And it's okay to feel good about the stuff that you make. And that's the point of it all, is to do stuff that you love doing and that you love making, I think, anyway. Yeah,
because we have a lot of young podcasters listening in, thinking about starting a show in the beginning of creating their podcast or growing it. Mm-hmm. And they're coming here looking for inspiration. Again, having your 88 questions is a great resource, obviously, for them. But just to hear from other people's journey. And what I love about your story about Ed Sheeran was the fact that in a moment's notice at hand, he was able to produce a clip of himself like he was pre-planned to do so. As a point of reference for himself that you are getting better.
He had the receipts to show, which I think is such a brilliant thing to do. Because if you're not recording, like, I don't know, think about it like a weight trainer or a bodybuilder. If they're not keeping track of like the weight that they're lifting, what their reps are, how frequently they're doing it, which exercises they're doing where, if they're not like keeping track of this, how are they supposed to know that they've made any progress? Right. So it's you obviously you're not going to be good at it right away. So you have to sit down, you have to do the thing, and then you got to watch it back. I still do this to this day. I do sales presentations and things like that. I got to make things coaching that I go to offices and I do coaching for, sales professionals and things like that. And when I'm doing it, I have to make that whole presentation and then I have to read it through a few times. And then I'm going to set my camera up and I'm going to watch myself give that presentation. And when I do that, I'm going to notice like, oh, I'm very stiff. My shoulders aren't moving. I'm not walking around, or my voice sounds like a robot. And so I should fix that. You know what I'm saying? Like there's these little things that you notice about yourself, and it's okay to notice those things. In fact, I would make the argument that it's important that you notice those things and you notice them quickly. Because as soon as you see it, it's like, oh, that's what I sound like. So if you sound like you've got a nasally voice and you talk super high, it's probably because you're stressed out. Take a deep breath and relax. And your voice is going to come down a little bit and you're going to feel a little bit more in your own skin. And more to it too. The doing it over and over and over again, it reduces the amount of jitters that you get. Nerves, right? Even, David, I'm telling you this, like I said, 18 years, I'm a camera guy, I've been on camera. I was still a little bit nervous. You come on and you do the introduction that you're saying, and I'm still like, oh God, breathe.
Yeah, right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It doesn't go away. It might lessen a little bit over time, but I think when you listen to your favorite podcaster, you got to understand, this is a human being putting themselves out into the world, which can be scary at best.
Yes.
When you face a wall of comments, reviews, opinions, and you're thinking, man, I don't want to be judged for putting out my content. And if that's kind of your approach and that's what's keeping you back, then I want you to think about the last time you went shopping at Walmart. Do you realize that the people behind you were watching you put your food and choices onto the belt, and they're going, oh my gosh, they're eating that? Oh my gosh. Right. And you're being judged. Oh, look at their clothes. Oh, wow. Like you are always under the microscope. And you've survived this far, right? You've survived. You're okay. Someone has judged your driving ability. Someone has judged everything about you. You're fine. And if your podcast is not for someone, most likely they just won't listen. They're going to quietly exit and move on, and you'll never know. So don't worry about it. Do your best, invest the time, grow, grab great resources that you put out into the world, educate yourself, find out what you don't know, because we all don't know what we don't know. And one thing I challenged somebody recently with was, you can become an expert in bungee jumping. You can listen to podcasts about bungee jumping. You can read books about bungee jumping, watch YouTube videos. But the moment that you can claim to be a bungee jumper is when you actually jump. Up to that point, you are just an expert in bungee jumping, but you've never done it. So if you want to be a podcaster, you got to jump. You got to just hit record, put something out into the world and go, well, that's done. And now I can move forward and get better. But until that point, you haven't podcasted yet. So just start and get better. Use the tools that are out there. Learn from others. Listen, grow, get feedback, and you'll do better as you grow over time, right?
Yep, exactly. I have this saying that kind of changed my perspective on anything. And I don't know how we are for time here, but I got one more really good story I think that'll help shift some people's paradigms when it comes to this sort of thing. So the saying goes, you will worry less about what people think about you when you realize how seldom they do. Now, the proof is in the pudding, so here's the story. I was recently divorced. This is the second long-term relationship I had since high school. I have no idea how the dating world works. I am a total klutz when it comes to talking to women, and so I just stewed away in my house by myself playing my video games until one day I just had enough of being stuck in this fog. And so I decided I was going to take myself out and treat myself to a beer and some fries. And that was ambitious thought, because as soon as I got in the car, the anxiety started to set in, like, who am I to be going out by myself and doing this, right? So I get to the bar, and against all the fear and the alarm bells that were ringing inside of my soul, I stepped out, I walked inside, I sat down at a table, and I ordered my beer and my fries. And I'm sitting there by myself, and I'm really just trying to resist the urge to, pick up your phone and like get lost in the scrolling and, distract myself from the reality of what was going on. Because inside my narrative was that, oh, look at this old loser who is by himself at a bar, eating fries and drinking beer alone. And I don't know why that was my narrative, but that's what I thought other people thought of me. And so I'm sitting here feeling some type of way about it. And I'm just kind of like, glancing around the room, and I caught eyes with another guy that was across kitty corner to where I was sitting. And he quickly like, oh shoot. And he like looked the other direction. And I saw something in him that I recognized in myself, which was this story that I was telling myself, like, oh, I'm a loser in the bar. Nobody likes me, right? And I was like, oh God, I'm not the only one that's thinking this thought.
Wow.
I wonder who else is thinking this thought. And so I started looking around at all the other people, and lo and behold, I was not the only one in that bar that was feeling awkward and judged. it was quite literally every single person that I was looking at. I could see, to some degree, a little bit of like, oh, please don't look at me and judge me in them. And I'll tell you, David, it unlocked a superpower in me that has allowed me to forget what I think of myself. It allowed me to take the focus off of me, like, oh God, me, everybody's looking at me, I'm the worst, da da da. And I just started looking out at the world. I don't even look at myself anymore. I'm like out looking at the rest of the world, and I see the fear, and I see the pain, and I see the trauma, and I see the desire for connection that exists in other people. And that has made the world a much more inviting place. And with that frame, now, if you're a podcaster or somebody who wants to podcast or create content or put yourself out in the world, I would challenge you to do the same thing. When you sit down in front of the camera or in front of the microphone, you're going to have attention on yourself. You're going to be thinking about yourself. And you're going to be thinking, I sound stupid. I look dumb. I'm going to say something idiotic. And take the attention off of that. Even if it's just for a couple of seconds, this is something you've got to practice. This is a skill that needs to be practiced. You put that attention on to who you're supposed to be talking to.
Right.
For example, like right now, you and me, we're across, miles and miles of distance and talking to each other virtually. And I'm not even looking at your face. I'm looking at my camera because I want you to know that I'm looking at you and feel like I'm talking to you. So I have to kind of imagine a little bit. I have to get a little bit creative to be able to say the things that I need to say genuinely and authentically, and to articulate my thoughts properly. Now I'm in the zone. Now I can say all the things that I need to say because I'm not worried necessarily so much about what my video looks like, what I'm saying. I know that what I'm going to say is coming from the right place. And so if it lands, it lands. Amazing. If it doesn't, cool. I'm going to watch this back a dozen times and I'm going to figure out all the things that I could have done better. And on my next time, I'm going to try to do it a little bit better. And that's what we get to do, right? Not what we have to do. That's what we get to do as creative people who want to have a voice, who want to have an impact, who want to help people.
That is gold, Devon. That is so good. I'm sitting with you at the bar with my French fries and beer, watching this all unfold for me. And again, the power of story. We talked about that at the beginning, how story is important, right? You just unfolded that as like a master class on telling a story, putting us there in the bar with you. I could smell the bar. I could feel the chatter in the background. There's some 80s music playing on in the background. I'm there with you as you tell that. And I think you just kind of opened our eyes to the fact that it's beyond just us in the moment. Think about your audience. They're the most important reason why we're doing this, why we're showing up and putting content into the world. So you got me. That was great, Devon. That was really good.
Yeah. It's so much, and it does take a lot of energy to shift the focus, but it's so much more free to be able to relinquish that burden of like, I'm worried about myself, and to put that focus on the people that you're helping. And it makes much better content. I'm sure this was a good conversation. I would say so myself anyway.
Yeah, no, I love it. It's great value. And on top of that, again, your resources you have for podcasters to answer some of those questions that are nagging us. You've compiled it for us. Let's close off again with your podcast and the link, which we'll put in the show notes, to get the book in advance before we buy a copy on Amazon and pay you money, real money, for the book, and leave you a review for the book, which is coming in the future, right? Because we're all going to do that. Everyone listening, we're going to do that. Again, where do we go to get a copy of this amazing resource?
theperspectivepodcast.ca/88 questions.
Okay. And that's the number 88?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then, the podcast as well. Where should we start listening? The most recent episode? Should we go back to episode 1? Where's our starting point as a new listener?
I got a couple of favorites. The earlier episodes are obviously a little bit tougher for me to get through just because we were still trying to find our voice even for this podcast. But Fred, I think it was Fred Smith or Fred Ford or something like that. But Fred, look for Fred. That episode is another one of those episodes where we talked a lot about dealing with that inner voice and how to overcome the haters and how to like put into practice this idea of intentionally creating for the purposes of serving people. And I just think is a brilliant episode that hasn't gotten enough views. So I would definitely say start there.
Okay, great. Awesome. And is it available everywhere? Where do we look?
Anywhere that you find a podcast or a video, because we do our shows video and audio. So you can find it on YouTube, you can find it on Spotify or Apple or wherever else you get your podcasts from. It'll be there.
Awesome. All the links will be in the show notes, everyone, as always. Devon, come back in the future. I would love to have you back.
Absolutely.
And keep the conversation going. You brought so much great value in our conversation and in the resources that you have in the world. So thank you for what you're doing. You're making an impact, and I've learned a lot just having you on the show. So thank you for being here.
It was my pleasure. Thanks, David.
All right, everybody. All the information in the show notes, as always. Go and support Devon and all the great things he's doing. Go listen to the podcast, like, subscribe, share, do all the things. Pound that bell, whatever you need to do, and support Devon in his efforts of helping podcasters. Again, thanks, Devon.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you for sticking all the way through to the very end. It's bittersweet that the episode is over and that we're done for this episode, but you will come back and I will come back, and there's you and me, and we're one big happy family here at the How to Podcast series, far beyond being just pod pals, which is fine, but I'd much rather do life together as family here. And to that end, a reminder, as we talked earlier in other episodes as well, that we do have a meetup group, and you are invited. I would love to have you come. It's free. We do them scattered throughout our calendar, different days, different times, because we have people listening around the world, like Cuba and Warsaw, Poland. Hi, Cuba. It's amazing how we can reach the world with a podcast. So through our meetup group, what we do is we get together. It's free for you. Cost me money, but that's okay. I'm okay with that. We get together, we meet other podcasters, we talk podcasting, and it's a way to get from behind the microphone, sitting by ourselves, recording on our own, and doing community. Podcasters need community. You need to meet other podcasters. And just in a low-key, fun environment, talk podcasting. So my challenge to you in 2024 and beyond is to get into a meetup group, find other podcasters, introduce yourself, and make new friends. It's just like school all over again, grade 9. Let's meet each other and share the podcast journey. Go to howtopodcast.ca and click on all the information you'll find there around our meetups. And I'd love to have you there. Thanks for listening. Catch you on the next episode. Get out there and record your podcast. Take care.